Curling now enters the Sports Weekend Spotlight.
Hi again, curling fans. Devin Haru in our downtown digital studios, flying a little bit solo tonight because my pal Colleen Jones is back at another national championship, curling in the mixed Canadian championships in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. There she is, 41 years after winning her first Scotties title in Regina, Saskatchewan, still out there kicking butt alongside her son, Luke's fiance Marley, and Paul Fleming. If you can believe it, Paul Fleming and Colleen won the mixed national championship in 1993 in Swift Current. So it's a full circle moment for Colleen. We're going to catch up with her later in the show. So wonderful to be talking to all of you, watching the roll call, seeing where all you great curling fans are tuning in from today. Okay, a lot to get to. The Pan Continental Curling Championships wrapping up in Kelowna. Brad Gushue claiming another title, beating Korea on the men's side. On the women's side, it was Korea beating Japan in the gold medal game, and the United States defeating Carrie Anderson's Team Canada in the bronze medal game. But perhaps it was what happened off the ice at the Pan Continental that made all the headlines. And at the center of all of it, the skipper from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, Brad Gushue. And we'll go to the heart of the matter right now and join Mr. Gushue, who is on that curling show. Hello to you, Brad. I guess you were dancing with our music on the show.
Yeah, there's some good music there. When it came on, I started bopping my head, and Steph caught me. So
there you go. There you go. Listen, congratulations on yet another win. I was thinking about all the times you've donned the maple leaf throughout your career. Where would you rank this international event, Brad, in all of the ones you've competed at over your illustrious career?
That's a tough question. Obviously, when you compare it to an Olympic Games or a World Championship, it's certainly not at that level. But anytime you get to represent your country, wear the maple leaf and go out there and play against the other countries, it's an honor and a privilege. And to come out on top, we're pretty happy with it. There were some good teams there: Corey Dropkin, Yannick Asawa, and the Korean team. Obviously, good bunch of players. So, it's not easy, but we fortunately pulled it out.
The Pan Continental Championships, you've been at both of them now. It started in an arena setting. Now it was at the curling club. You and I talked. A lot of people know about how you were feeling. What have you heard in the days since, Brad, when you didn't hold back and you had some strong feelings about it?
Yeah, I've heard a lot. I've got a really good response from the players that were at the event. I think of the other 7 teams that we competed against, 6 of them came up and really thanked me and appreciated the fact that someone spoke out. So that obviously made me feel pretty good. Even had some officials and some event staff, the organizing committee come up, and the reception has been really positive. And I think the reason it has been is there have been a feeling of the players being pushed towards the back or a secondary thought at these events for a long time. And there's also a little bit of a fear of speaking out. So some of these teams are, they're worried about their association saying something or the World Curling Federation. And I just felt we were in a position where I wasn't afraid to speak out and kind of call it as I see it. And we had attempted over the last couple of years to go through the proper channels to get some of this stuff changed, and it just hasn't. I felt letting people know what we were dealing with may lead to some change, and hopefully it will. I know even after I spoke, there were some changes at the event, and so at least some of it worked.
In terms of your concerns, I know a lot of people would have read your comments, but what were some of your concerns? Because as a professional athlete, you show up at an international competition with an expectation that there are going to be things in place to allow you to be your best. And that didn't seem to be the case, Brad.
Yeah. So, I want to make it clear, this wasn't just a one-off for us. Like there's been years of seeing issues playing at world championships and WCF events. But this one event in particular, we showed up and we weren't able to watch practice, the other team practice. The locker rooms we were changing, sharing with the women's teams. And even after we came off after the final, I walked in there and the Korean women's team were in there. So, and then you add in the fact that there was no area to warm up. So as athletes that are competing, for your country and competing at an international event, not to have the ability to warm up in the venue and be told that you had to go outside when it was -1, -2 degrees, just didn't seem appropriate to me. When there was areas in the curling club that could have been used for those things, but instead they decided to use them for TV purposes or other purposes. So it just felt like the curlers were pushed back and were secondary in the whole planning and set up by the World Curling Federation.
Brad, we're going to have members of the World Curling Federation following you on the broadcast tonight. And when you describe an atmosphere of some athletes who don't carry the prestige you carry in the sport, and you told me yourself you're on the back nine of your career. So when you speak, people listen, but there are people, other athletes that don't have that privilege. That seems concerning to me, that this is the atmosphere that exists in curling today.
Yeah, it's certainly there. I had a really good conversation earlier today with Jill Officer, who is part of the Athletes Commission. So just so the viewers are aware, there is an avenue for us as curlers to get to the World Curling Federation. The problem with it is not all the curlers are aware that Jill and Tyler George are available for these calls. The other side is there's only so much pull and ability they have to change and make the decisions necessary. And oftentimes what's happening is the tournament directors go in there and they set up the event the way they see fit. The problem is these tournament directors aren't athletes. They haven't played. They don't know what players need. And it certainly it feels as though we as players are not given any sort of not given any empathy. Like even when we showed up and we talked about the thermal part, like I know the rules are the rules. However, we're put in a curling club when we aren't normally in a curling club, and you have to be willing to adjust because the players can't go out there and freeze because you want us to wear a certain color. It just, you have to adapt, and not having a player there to make those decisions, I think hurts the event from a player standpoint.
I was thinking ahead of our conversation that you poured your life into this sport, and I know you weren't thrilled with what took place this week. Is your sport, Brad, where you thought it would be in terms of professionalization at this point of your career? When you think back to winning Olympic gold in 2006 at the beginning of all of this, is it where it needs to be in terms of the progression of everything from sponsors to athlete rights to television?
No, to be completely honest, no, it's not. I think, even you take the argument of wearing our brands and our logos at national championships, fighting for locker rooms and places to warm up. It just seems like we've taken a little bit of a step back. Another reason I kind of made the statements that I did, and the frustration that we had in Ottawa when we were given a per diem by the World Curling Federation that only was enough to cover our breakfast. And then at the Pan Continental, there was no per diem. Now, fortunately for us as Canadians, our federation, the Curling Canada, covered all of our expenses. But we had countries like Chinese Taipei and Australia that were paying their own expenses and then had to pay for all their meals. Meanwhile, admission was being charged for people to come in and watch. And they're coming in to watch Australia and Chinese Taipei play, but we can't even give them a sandwich. So there's lots of little bit issues that go on there. And even in Ottawa last year, there's 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people there. And you had countries that had to go and pay out of the pocket to go and entertain those people. So I think there's a lot of things that need to change in our game. And I'm disappointed, I would say, over the last number of years that we haven't made this step forward. It's something we have in certain areas. So I don't want to be across the board, but I think there's some events and some situations where I thought we would be much further than we are right now.
Sure thing. Winding down, because I know you're right back out onto the ice at another event at the Slam in Nova Scotia, but I'm thinking specifically about the Pan Continental, and you talk about being a Canadian team and the sponsorship and the support you've had, and then I think about India, for example. These guys who care deeply about their sport in the B division, who in some respects are happy to be at an international event trying to grow this game. So I'm sure you can appreciate that when you look at the Pan Continental, you have your team and a team like India trying to break into this. Where do we go from here with this specific event?
I don't know the solution to it. I know there needs to be some changes, because even, I spoke on a lot of issues. I didn't even touch on the B event, at the Pan Continental, which had as many or more issues than what we had. I think we need to really look at how we qualify teams for Worlds, the whole revenue and business model of all of this. I think there was a decision made without thinking about the whole business aspect of this. And I'd be interested to see what Graham's comments are later on about that, because I'm not familiar with it, but it certainly seemed like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to put this event in and really not have a business plan on how they were going to grow it. Because after year one, to shrink it immediately, sends a little bit of a red flag up. And, I'm not sure about all that stuff because I haven't been educated on it, but interested to hear it. But my arguments and my voice in all this is I think we need to put the players on a higher level than what they are at these events, where it feels like the World Curling Federation officials and everybody else is put higher than the players. And I think, you being around those events, and certainly Colleen would have been a great advocate. She would back me up on it, because I've heard from other Canadian team athletes, and Laurie St. George that put a message out on Twitter as well, that have had the same experiences as us, and not only us, but the other countries that don't have the privileges that we have playing from Canada, where, our association at least pays for meals and helps us get to these events. So there's lots of issues.
All right. Well, that's a perfect segue, because you're right. We have Graham Prowse from the World Curling Federation, Brad, waiting in the wings. So we'll get to him. Appreciate the time as always, and good luck, because you're right back into another box.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Devin. Take care.
Okay, thank you, Brad. All right, let's get right to it. As I said, the Vice President of the World Curling Federation, Graham Prowse, who is in the Canadian Curling Hall of Fame, knows this game, loves this game, and gracious enough to join us on this show to address some of Brad Gushue's concern. And so let's invite Graham. Wonderful to have you on the show, Graham. You heard it. I know you were listening. You just heard some of Brad's concerns. So I'll turn the mic over to you and let you address some of what Brad's concerns were.
Sure. Thanks, Devin, and nice to be with you again. So definitely heard it. We and appreciate that Brad brought those issues forward, and I can tell you that we heard similar things around some of the issues with the constraints of the building from other teams as well, and we did you do make your best effort at the time to try and deal with them, but more importantly, I think we learn from them, and we certainly incorporate those things that have been pointed out and things that we could have done better moving forward.
Graham, I know how deeply you care about this sport. You've been entrenched in it for decades. Was this event at the standards that you would expect a World Curling Federation event?
Well, so I think there's two ways to look at this, Devin. I think there's the competition and then there's the event itself. So if I can compare last year in Calgary, we were at Winsport, and Winsport's a phenomenal building. We had two arenas there. We were able to dress the arena that the A pool is in, right to full TV standards. We're able to do a full TV broadcast from there. And so from a competition standpoint, I can certainly see the difference in the in what the venue looked like and how it operated and how it better accommodated the players. From an event standpoint, though, I would say that the Kelowna was actually a better event. It was the volunteers were fantastic. From an event standpoint, from the people that were there to enjoy it, the building was full. Last year, it was not nearly full. In fact, there were some draws that were hardly any people at it. So I think when you look at those two things separately, this year we certainly look on it as a success. From an event standpoint, and I think actually from a competition standpoint, it was excellent as well in terms of the quality of the ice, the quality of the teams, and so on. Barring, accepting that there were some things that could have gone better for sure.
I appreciate that you pointed out the great volunteers. I understand more than 200 volunteers who put everything into this event. And of course, outstanding ice maker, Hans Woodrick, who was out there. The ice looked fantastic. So thank you for pointing that out. As I understand it, Graham, the Pan Continental and Europeans have gone into clubs this year as a sustainability model to look at the feasibility of paying to be in an arena versus a club setting. I'm sure there are some lessons to be learned from this. So what things do you take into account when you look at this event moving forward?
So our preference is certainly to have the A side at least in an arena. Absolutely. So going forward, that's our goal. We've got some hot leads. Frankly, some of them off the back of this last week in Kelowna. So it's our preference to host them in arenas, and that's more comfortable for the athletes. It's probably it is a better setting for allowing them to be accommodated as they should. I think, though, the other part of this that needs to be considered is the cost of doing business in arenas, and it's not cheap. When we go in, especially in Canada, when we go to an arena setting, we're displacing the usual occupants of the arenas for up to 12 days. We've got to convert the ice from hockey ice to curling ice. We got to dress the venue. We got to bring broadcast in. We got to do all that stuff. So it's not cheap. Same as on the broadcast side, we went to a slightly reduced production model this year for sustainability, more so around being able to affordability. We've got to live within our means, and that was all part of it. Kelowna stepped up really late, and actually we're very grateful that they did and happy that they did, because otherwise we would have been left scrambling just to be able to find a host for the event.
Fascinating. Listen, in doing some preparation for our conversation, I know that you were in the running to become president of the World Curling Federation. And one of the things that you were sort of lobbying and making a priority is talking about the advancement of broadcast, the accessibility of the two-screen experience, being in venue and interacting. And then this doesn't show up on the broadcast on television. And I'm also learning that the B side, the B division, except for some local television, we're not streamed. I've made mention of India, how proud those gentlemen are of their team and their country and their sport, and yet they couldn't tell people back home to watch their games. So I wonder, as somebody who's an advocate to getting this in more accessible places, how disappointing that might have been for you, Graham.
Well, it was disappointing, but we just, again, it's a little bit of context.
Sure.
I mentioned earlier that we did we mounted a reduced production model. We didn't bring in the full TV truck and the satellite and all the stuff that goes with that. The difference in cost, we were over $300,000 US to mount the production we did. Would have been another $250,000 US to do that. This is a relatively new event. It's only the second year, and honestly, we are trying to find ways to do things better for the same or less, so that we can include those folks in the B event, so that we can distribute the entire product worldwide. We're very much focused on that, and as I don't have to tell you in the TV business, things are in flux, and
Yes.
and we're trying to figure it out as we go here as well. But certainly our goal is to do that.
I can appreciate that, and I appreciate your candor in this conversation. We should also mention that, of course, both Chinese men and women are advancing into the A pool, winning the B division. So watch out for them, because it's going to get fierce. To that point, there are some Canadians, Graham, who message me and say, what is this thing? What is this event? And we know the Europeans have had to battle it out for spots. Sometimes we're a little pampered in this country, but we have to fight it out. And there's going to be some growing pains and evolution in this event. Do you believe in the Pan Continental Curling Championships?
For at the present time, yes, I do, and for a couple of reasons. It actually better mirrors the European qualification system. Before the Pan Continental, there was 2 berths out of the Americas and 2 berths out of Pacific Asia. When we merged them, we actually created a 5th spot. So we actually there's an additional spot that can be earned by all these teams to find their way to Worlds. And something else that's not well known is that we actually track the performance of the 5 teams from the Pan Continental, the top 5 teams that qualify out of the 7 from Europe, and whichever zone cumulatively finishes higher, that's where the 13th spot goes to. So there is an opportunity to grow the field from the Pan Continental as well. But if I can just tack on a second thing to your question, sure. I'm not sure it's perfect. And we're looking all the time. I know there's been other options suggested, World Ladder, different things like that. We are about to head to Scotland next week for Competition Rules Commission meetings. Part of it at every meeting is a standing conversation about the qualification system. So we'll review what's happened here. We will review after the Europeans, and we'll factor that into our decision making going forward.
And we should also point out that, of course, there's a World Championship in Canada that Canadians get a direct entry into every second year. So that's something that needs to be considered as well. Listen, I'm really grateful for you taking the time. We don't know each other overly well, but I can tell you're someone open to having tough conversations and genuinely want to, listen to the athletes and evolve the product. So grateful for you, Graham.
Happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to your opportunity to talk with Jill next.
Yes.
I have to just echo Brad's remarks. Jill and Tyler George are the leaders of the Athlete Commission. They do a great job, and we continually get feedback through them. And I would encourage anybody that's a competitive player that's listening to this, that they avail themselves of Jill and Tyler there, and the whole Athlete Commission. We do listen.
Stand-up stuff, VP of World Curling Federation, Graham Prowse. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Happy to come back anytime.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Graham. And moving on, we got to keep it going because I know Colleen Jones is getting ready to hit the ice for her practice. But before that, so wonderful to always have a friend of this show and a friend of mine, a great curler, Olympic champion, on and on and on. Jill Officer, who is the chair of the Athletes Commission at the World Curling Federation. Jill, it's been too long.
It has been a while, Devin. It has.
Really happy to see you, and so grateful for you being on the show. Graham teed you up perfectly, and I know you've been having conversations, and I know you care deeply about this because it's wonderful that you wear both the athlete hat and you also know how the World Curling Federation, the inner workings of that. So maybe you can share some of the conversations you had, because Brad was generous to say he had a wonderful conversation with you.
Yeah, and we did have a good chat earlier. I didn't, he said what he said last week, and I didn't need to bother him anymore while he was there. But having said that, Tyler George from our commission, who's been mentioned a couple times, he was on site at the Pan Continental for a couple of days last week and sat down with a couple of other members of Team Gushue and talked to a number of other athletes that were there. So we always do have someone on site at WCF events like the PCCC, Europeans, and the World Championships. Sometimes it's difficult for us to be there for the entire event, but nonetheless, the athletes can still reach out to us. We have other members of the commission, which maybe I'll just give a shout out to. Harry Lill from Estonia is our mixed doubles rep. Rune Lorenston is our wheelchair rep from Norway. Anna Kubishkova from Czech Republic, or is it Czechia now?
Czechia.
Anna is our other women's rep, and our other male rep is Benoit Schwartz from Switzerland. So, we're all available for people to talk to. And I think that that's one of the challenges of our commission that we've been trying to work on for the last year, is just trying to get more communication out, remind people that we're here, remind people that we can, sometimes even from a distance, that we can help. And I think, one of the biggest things that to me that's come out of this, I think, is that we need to have more communication with the people that are on site at our events, and maybe make sure that some of those little things are being looked after before the event even starts, because I think we could have maybe helped in this situation a little bit.
Thank you for saying that, because I can imagine there were probably times over your career where you would show up to an event and it wasn't what you were expecting for whatever reason. And as Brad points out, it's hard to be the athlete to stick your neck out and say something. And so I'm sure you can appreciate that and understand that as a curler, you don't want to mess up with your NSO or your federation or ruffle the feathers and become that. Is that concerning to you, Jill, that you heard some of that dialogue over the past week, that people didn't feel they had the space to come forward?
Yeah, and I think I'd like to continue the conversation with athletes on that, because I want to really understand, and I think our commission would agree, we really want to understand what the barrier is, because I do understand that some feel that there's a barrier through their member association, that they feel that they can't speak up. Whereas with us being the World Curling Federation Athlete Commission, we want to make sure that there's no barriers through the WCF for them to speak up. So I think that that's something that we want to continue to work on, or continue to find out about, because we are here for a reason. We do feel that we're listened to. I like to believe Graham when he says that they listen. So I think that if we could get athletes coming to us a little bit more, because I do find that that's a challenge. Having athletes come to us, or finding the opportunity always to have that time for those long conversations about various things. So I think that's just something that we're going to continue to work on, is trying to make sure that communication is there, and to remind people that we are here to listen. We are here to take these concerns back and hopefully get some change made.
And while there were some uncomfortable moments for a lot of people over the last week in the wake of these comments, I don't have to tell you about news cycles as a former journalist, that it does elevate and put into the spotlight bigger conversations. In preparation for our conversation, Jill, I was digging through some World Curling Federation documents, found an athlete survey from last year about the top 10 concerns athletes have. And so I know these are sort of very specific event-driven problems and issues Brad has, but on the macro level, it was fascinating for me to see travel, scheduling, demand, all of that at the very top of the list. So tell me a little bit about that, about the sort of what you're hearing generally in the sport, burnout because of the demanding schedule.
Right. I thanks for bringing that up, Devin, because I really think that this is a huge issue that we're trying to figure out how we can address, because the length of the season is a huge issue for athletes. The time away from their family and their friends is a huge issue, and there's just sort of more and more events being put on the schedule that just lengthens the season. And the length of season was actually a higher concern from the athletes who responded to the survey than the length of the game, which is also a very hot topic, of course. So it's interesting to see that. And I think that we have to be mindful of that with the athletes, that we don't want to create systems that are making it more lengthy, creating more burnout, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, some people might argue with me that, well, then why aren't we cutting the length of the game? And I understand that point. I also think that the length of the game is actually, like I said, a lesser of an issue than the actual length of the entire season, which runs from August till May.
Sure.
So, that's certainly something that's on our radar. And, the WCF actually hired an athlete support officer in the summertime, and he's supporting our athlete commission to try to do more things. And he will also be looking at some of these things like the event calendar and stuff over time, but it will take a little bit of time for that stuff to evolve.
And the 10 and 8N debate will rage on, no doubt. I also found it interesting that number 10 on the list was social media comments. I can tell you, after a lifetime of that, don't read the comments.
I know.
Don't read the comments. Really wonderful of you, Jill, to come on, and let's follow up on this, because
sure.
I think
Anytime, Devin.
And I know it was sort of thrust into the spotlight in a very spicy way, but I think there's an ongoing conversation, as you say, that needs to take place for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the time, appreciate the opportunity to speak. And again, like we're doing our best. And I think we're more supported now that we have an athlete support officer. And so if athletes have things that they want to bring forward to us, we encourage them to do that.
Olympic champion and chair of the Athletes Commission, Jill Officer. Thank you, Jill.
Thanks, Devin.
Awesome. Okay, we have to keep it moving, because Colleen Jones is getting ready to go out on the ice in Swift Current, Saskatchewan at yet another national championship. I was trying to count them up. I've lost count. Is she still with us?
Still with you.
Call.
From beautiful Saskatchewan. How are you?
Well,
Is my mic working?
Listen, I always give you heck for us running late. Now I'm running late.
No worries. It's a really great debate, but I'll tell you, athletes commissions like Jill and Tyler's, and the one that's headed up by Nicodine and Emma Miskey got the biggest shot in the arm by Brad Gushue's comments, because no one has been taking, sometimes it's lip service when they form these commissions. This is the shot in the arm. They need to give some of the power back to the curlers and the athletes, because these discussions have been going on forever. Remember when Kevin Martin started the boycott of the Brier? That created massive change. Gutsy and hard what they did, gutsy and hard what Brad did, but truer words never spoken. Because when you're there and see, and you're playing in events, you kind of go, this could be different. Nothing could be different here. In Swift Current, they know how to put on a great event.
Can I just say, I've missed you. I've missed you throughout the show. Leave it to you to cut right to the middle of it and take us right to the ice. You're 2-0 to start.
2-0. We play Ontario. Laurie Eddy, who's a Nova Scotian's on that team. Skipped by Scott McDonald, who I think also has Nova Scotian roots. So it's sort of Nova Scotia playing Nova Scotia.
What are you trying to say?
I'm playing a lot of Nova Scotia, and they're well trained.
You beat my home province of Saskatchewan to start a thrilling comeback victory. You also came back against the defending champs, Quebec.
Different team from Quebec, but
a different team
nonetheless.
Today. Now Ontario. Cole, you won this event in Swift Current
30 years ago. Pregnant with Luke, and early pregnancy, like 8 weeks. Like you're growing a human. You're just exhausted. I don't know how Brianne Harris did it, but after every game, I would go and sleep. And now I'm curling with Luke. So I don't know that this has ever got there. He actually is just letting me clean the rock. It's pretty surreal to be kind of playing with your son at this age for me. And there's Paul Fleming. I won the mix with Paul Fleming in '99 in Victoria. Marley Powers. is now going to get married to my Lukey. And there's me. I thought I was taller than this. I think I'm standing on. Could have sworn I was taller. But anyhow, it really, to me, shows like the beauty of the sport, that it is truly lifetime, that you get to play with your kids. I don't know who would ever trade that opportunity. And to have won this event in this city, and to be back here, I mean, I couldn't have dreamt this up, but I'm living the dream right now. I'm just, of everything I've done, this is going to be a highlight. Unless I get mad at Luke. In that case, I'm like, ooh, you made me mad. And
well, we had our pep talk earlier today, so I know you're very zen about how you're approaching tonight's game.
No, I'm not. I'm never zen. I try to be zen, but then I cannot cut out a killer instinct that I've got. Okay, so that's inbred in me. So, but I do try to be zen. I do try to appreciate that I turn 64 next month, and I'm still out here throwing rocks and loving it. And the game has given me nothing but, and I know I speak for every curler in Canada, the friendships you've made, the people you've seen. I've played against Lori Eddy in the Nova Scotia Provincials. I've known her for a long time. And then you bump into people, you know, Sean Meacham's team, who we played 2 years ago, people that you never would have met without curling. This is like my church right here. And I'm so glad to be in church. And I pray for a win.
You will never lose that. You will never.
I can tell you right now, they should have a Pan Pacific event here. This is an unbelievable arena, just absolutely beautiful. I think they want to.
Beautiful. How's the ice?
Ice is amazing.
Yeah.
And they had a huge event here last year. So John Epping was telling me, you're going to love the ice. He's right. This is like arena conditions that they're able to create. New building. Broncos play next door. But everybody, absolutely, somebody, British Columbia in there, they're getting ready. They're watching that curling show before the game. And they have it on. They're like, good job. Yes. But I hope we beat them. They heard that. I love it. So yeah, they're getting ready for practice. We're all getting ready for practice. Draw to the button.
Yeah,
Always huge.
I think you're on at about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. I've stretched. You can only stretch this body so many times.
Well, I was
only
going to say, could you ever in your wildest dreams have thought your career would lead to a national championship doing a show from a cell phone as you get ready to practice?
No kidding. Who would think this would happen? There's all kinds of things in this. What year are we in? 2024. That just look. There's Saskatchewan right there. They're watching the show too. Okay.
Oh, Daddy,
yeah.
You better have everybody watching the show over there.
I want to make sure I'm off the rock, not talking before they get ready for draw to the button, because I don't want to be accused of sabotaging Ontario's draw to the button.
Okay, hey, really quick before I let you go, Brad said that you would know all of the things that he was talking about.
Absolutely, and the guts it took for Brad to say what he said, I think, is amazing. I remember going to my first Worlds, and the first thing I was disappointed was it was not like a Canadian event. Do you know what I mean? Like I was just, they're missing this, they're missing that. There's no this, there's no that. But not having the courage, we just were like, well, we're here. We're in the Maple Leaf. We're so thankful. We're not going to complain that, in our estimation, it wasn't up to snuff. Then you go to another event, you're going, well, this is the same thing. It's not as good as the Scotties. That would happen over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I think that this can create some really positive change where the athletes are the show. Without the curlers, there is no show. There's no event, right? So you better honor them. And I think when you think about when Kevin Martin led the boycott years ago, the change that created, we mustn't forget the lessons learned from that period when all of the best curlers on the male side were just sitting, playing spiels. The Kerry Burtnicks, the Jeff Stoutons, the list was long of how many people joined that boycott. That was an incredibly hard thing for them to do. But they really never thought it would last as long as it did. But they also knew it was the change that needed to happen. And I think what Gushue's done has created some change and dialogue so that what happened at the Pan Pacific, there was such a long list of things that had gone, I don't want to say wrong, but that were misthought. Yeah. And you shouldn't be saying post game, this went wrong and this went wrong and this went wrong.
Yeah.
A lot went wrong. So and I've played at that curling club, fabulous. So such a great curling club, and so many great volunteers in there. They did everything they could do, but when all of the other things, all the curlers. I was at the Stu Cells in Halifax, and now I'm here. the thing that they all laughed about the most was where they were warming up outside, and the idea that you couldn't put, making a big deal about what color was under your shirt.
Well,
I think I have the wrong color on, so I'm going to zip up. I'm zipping up. I got a gray.
Sure those thermals match. Listen, our first show ever, call, and you got to get out there. Our first show ever said, "You're such a champion." Truer words have never been spoken. There you are back at a national championship. To see the way you're lighting up when you talk about playing in a national championship with your son and Paul and Marley, who's going to be your daughter-in-law. It's so special to see.
I wish it for every mom and dad who's got a junior kid curling. First off, that they take up your passion. And then secondly, that you get to play in something like this. It's just absolutely, I love it. I love curling anything. I mean, Mayflower Curling Club, one-on-ones, or Halifax Curling Club, I'll do it. I'll play you. You're on. Anyway, we're getting serious now.
Good luck and good curling tonight. You may not be as tall as you thought you were, but you're larger than life. You're larger than life.
Yeah, I love you. What a good segue.
Love you,
yeah.
Cole.
Okay, see you later from Swiss Current.
Yes.
Love it. Bye-bye.
Speedy Creek.
Yeah.
Okay. Incredible stuff. What a show so far. And we've got the big finish coming up, the hot stove. I'm so thrilled to be joined by Canadian press reporter, the great Greg Strong, Mike Harris, Joanne Courtney. The band is back together for the big finale. All right. And Charlotte. Look at Charlotte. Joe, let's see Charlotte. Congratulations.
Thanks, guys. She just fell asleep, so hopefully she cooperates. She does have some opinions. Watched a lot of curling in the last.
I'm sure she has the final say on everything these days.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Greg. I know we've been waiting for this conversation because it was a spicy last few days. Maybe some initial thoughts on how pointed Mr. Gushue was and how valid you think his concerns have been.
Yeah, how refreshing, by the way, to have an athlete just be open, honest, and tell it like it is. It happens so infrequently in the sports we cover, Dev. I don't think Bo Bichette would be calling me up to talk about game 1 or game 2 here, whereas Brad will give you all kinds of time. So, full credit to Mr. Gushue for the openness. What stuck out to me, we both chatted with him, Dev, was he questioned whether he would return to that event in the future, in our chat, if it was going to be set up the way it was this season. That to me is a big concern. He also, if it were another Canadian team, he would have, make sure he would want to talk to them and let them know, hey, here's what I experienced. So to me, that's an eyebrow raiser right out of the gate. But full marks to Brad for coming forward and being open and honest and telling it like it is, which doesn't happen a lot in sport.
Greg, it's a really good point because the reality of it is, I think, to get Canadians to care about this, you've got to have a bit of star power, I would believe, to get the casual fan. Mike Harris, congratulations on a silver medal as coach of the Korean team.
It's my color, Dev. It's good.
You said it.
Yeah.
You had a front row seat to all of this, and I can't imagine the backroom chatter in the wake of Mr. Gushue's comments. So over to you.
Well, I think Brad made a lot of good points, especially when it came to dealing with the players' access to proper areas to warm up and stretch and access to watching the other team practice. There's a lot of things there that were certainly valid and were not brought up by the World Curling Federation in the pre-event meetings, which was concerning to all of the teams. So that being said, there's a lot of things that were very good with the event as well. I mean, the ice was good, the rocks were good. Had the WCF immediately accommodated some of the athlete requests, i.e. being able to be out on the ice, providing area. Anyone who watched the event on the stream you would have noticed that there was a couple of sheets open in between the two sheets in play where there was plenty of room to get out there and stretch and lots of room for the athletes out in the ice rink. So common sense wasn't very common when it came to that type of stuff from the World Curling Federation. On the B side, there were requests from the coaches to have access to be behind the sheets of ice, just like the A side coaches were. They said the building couldn't accommodate it, which was not true. It was the exact same. It's a curling club. Whatever the amount of board space behind sheet 1 was the same as it was behind sheet 12 at the Kelowna Curling Club. So there was a lot of things that could have been accommodated easily by the WCF with a little bit of common sense. Now, the other side of that, when I hear him say I would be concerned about attending this event, Canada's got to understand that every other country in the world has had to fight to get to the Worlds for years and years and years. And maybe the US would be exempt in that as well. But when you look at, you've mentioned it already, the Europeans, Nick Dean wins all these world championships. If he doesn't finish in the top 7 at the Europeans the next year, he doesn't get to go back to the Worlds. So this has been ongoing forever in Europe, and Canada is now just kind of being thrown into this event, this Pan Continental event, where admittedly the conditions for some of the things regarding the athletes wasn't very good.
Yeah.
But the ice was good and the rocks were good and everything else was fine.
Yeah.
I had a couple of chats with other coaches who have attended some of the Asian championships over the past few years, or Asia Pacific championships, and said, wait until Canada has to go to New Zealand to compete in this event, or wait until Canada has to go to Kazakhstan to compete in this event, or wait until Canada has to go to China to compete in this event on poor ice conditions. No people watching. There are bigger issues at stake here. So while what Brad is saying was very, very true when it came to the athletes prep and the athletes getting ready for the actual game, everything else surrounding it, the event was actually quite lovely. I thought the ice was great. My team had a great time. A lot of the challenges that Canada faced were unique to Canada. My team could warm up in the curling lounge and not be bothered. Brad Gushue did not have that same luxury. He could not go up to the curling lounge, stretch, warm up, get ready to go, nor could Carrie Anderson.
Right.
So some of the challenges were unique to Canada. But listen, it was WCF was in a difficult position. They had to go to a club last minute. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Aberdeen at the Euros in a couple of weeks. But I thought they did as well as they possibly could. With some of the athlete issues, could have easily been solved and not had any of this stuff come up. It was, like I said, common sense wasn't common when it came to the officiating and kind of management of the athlete experience.
Joe, when you hear Greg say it's refreshing to hear an athlete be as candid, and I felt the same way. What's the athlete in you reaction? What does that feel like to see somebody saying what probably you have felt before, but maybe didn't feel you had the license to say?
Yeah, to be honest, I was shocked reading the article because he didn't mince words whatsoever. I mean, we heard him on the show 20 minutes ago, and he was a lot more eloquent and, really wanted to make sure that the point was clear, but he was like very direct, like, this is an embarrassment, this is not okay. And to put that in print, like, those articles will be there forever now, right? So that was my first reaction, was just surprise. And also the timing, like, he wasn't at the end of the event kind of just airing out the dirty laundry. He was in the middle of the thing. So huge distraction for Brad to go out and do that. But the biggest traction for all of his points, having done that in the middle of the event. So, I mean, that took a lot of guts, and you have to I'm very impressed with that, to put yourself out there. And as he says, like, he's in the end part of his career, and he's not afraid of backlash or comments, and he's at a point where he's very comfortable making those comments. So, I mean, good on him for doing it. But yeah, like, I was surprised, because no one wants distractions when you're playing in big events. Like, and for sure, the Pan Continental is an event where he himself said going into it, if we'll be okay, we'll be fine. But you want to go and you want to perform. You never want to have, an article where you really lay it all out there and then go play like crap the next day. So I was impressed.
Have there been times where you have wanted to say something as a team, but feared maybe the consequences of that, either from an NSO or World Curling Federation?
Yeah, I think whenever, like, we were at the big events, it just was never even on the radar to even go there. Like, the biggest thing was you never wanted to be a headline. You didn't want that distraction. And I think things have changed a lot in the last 5 years or so. I mean, we saw at the Olympics in 2022, like, athletes were more vulnerable than ever before. There's a lot more openness, I think, just with the fact that social media is so prevalent now, and people are getting more comfortable in that space. But I mean, for me as a fan, like, I've watched a lot of sports in the last month with this one, because we're pretty much sitting ducks at home. And I love it when athletes go into these interviews and they say what they think. And you watch NFL post games, and I mean, the players are swearing in their interviews. And I mean, me as the fan, I feel like I can actually get to know these players, understand the conditions better, see what the politics are in the sport, and it makes everything more interesting for me. So I loved it.
Personality, go figure. Joe, you talk about watching. A lot of people were happy, Greg, you couldn't watch on television. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that was sad. I had also set my PVR up, and I mean, from the get-go, you looked at the product and thought, ooh, something's not right here. And then when you kind of saw the setup, they didn't have the truck, they didn't have all the bells and whistles that they would have wanted to be working with, putting that on the network.
Yeah.
So that was too bad to see. But at the same time, like, everything's streaming now. I pulled up my iPad. It was really easy to find on tsn.ca. So I had no complaints about having to go through a different avenue to find it. It just, that sucks for the players. They're playing at an event where no one's getting paid. You win the thing, you're not making any money. So this is something you can say to your sponsors.
Sure.
Look, we're going to be on, national TV, and have that taken away mid-event. That really sucks.
Mike and Greg, I'd love both of you can chime in on this. I would love your perspective on the question I posed to Brad is, aren't we talking about the professionalization of this sport? And I feel like we've had these conversations really since '98 when it came back into the Olympics. But this idea of some people just being happy to be at an event, and then people who are making a living off this sport. Are we where, Mike and Greg, you thought we would be in terms of the evolution of this sport as being a pro curler?
Go ahead, Mike.
You want to go? What's your brand? Is your brand being Team Canada? Is Brad? I understand Brad's not being paid by Curling Canada to participate at a WCF event. Is that part of the deal, or is that, do you sell that to your, hey, I was Team Canada, the Pan Continental, that build that into your sponsorship package? Or Curling Canada is responsible for giving them money. It's not WCF that's responsible for paying the athletes to be there. Every other country other than Canada is happy to be there. Maybe US, I said, maybe US would fall into the same boat. But I think part of Brad's brand would be he's Team Canada. So when he goes to Pan Con or to one of his other sponsors and says, hey, I'm representing Canada at the Pan Continental Championship, trying to earn Canada berth to the World Championship.
Right. Should
he not be selling that? So I don't think that this event would fall into a situation where, if he wants to get paid, that he needs to deal with Curling Canada, not WCF in that matter. So, if is it part of your brand to be Team Canada? If you don't want to go, then don't go. Right. I mean, that's send the runner up from the Briar or whoever else who might be happy to go. So I'm kind of torn a little bit on this one. Representing your country is, Brad is someone who's done it many, many, many times. As is Carrie Anderson, same boat, right? So they've been the last 4 or 5 major world championship events. So if you had Matt Dunstone, would we have the same resistance to attend? That's my only view on it.
But I think that's an interesting point, because should things not all be equal for all if you're at that level?
They are equal for all of the countries that are there. None of them are being paid. It is equal, right? So look at it
where the bar is.
Yes. And for my opinion, yeah, it's a world. You're representing your country at an international event.
Okay.
So should you be paid for that? Do you want to get money to go to the Olympics? Does Brad get paid by Curling Canada to go to the Olympics? Or does Brad use that to sell to his sponsors as his brand? That's my look on it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Greg, I mean, there's always this bubbling up of a players union. I don't know where that's at, but
yeah, they've been quiet on this one. To me, it's tough to talk about the professionalization of curling when it has major attendance issues, and the television numbers aren't what they used to be. until they get butts in seats, it's really hard to generate a ton of revenue. And we've seen, I wrote a little something on it last week, 20% drop at the Brier and the Scotties between 23 and 2020, the last nationals before the pandemic. So that's a problem. There's the in-venue experience. There's a lot of things that the new Curling Canada CEO, when he or she is named, will have to tackle. But it's interesting. You mentioned the athlete's voice and such. It's interesting to me that it takes a prominent big name curler and pick your issue to go to the media and actually get results. And it's great to see small steps being made with regards to the athletes commissions.
Can I ask a question, Greg, before you, what results were achieved? That's my point. So what results have been achieved? Yes, his voice got put out there and we're listening, but there's nothing happened yet.
I'd look back to it.
Nothing happened there. Nothing happened to the Pan Continental.
Okay, I'd look back to a few years ago. I remember 18-19, we had prominent Canadian women's curlers, Chelsea Carey, Lisa Weigel, chiming in on the pay equity. And that happened a few months after they came forward and spoke out. We saw changes.
That's fair.
With the wild card rules. We saw changes last season with the pregnancy exemption. We had prominent curlers voice their objection to the way things were, and changes were made. Curling Canada had to walk back a few things as a direct result of those curlers speaking out, whether it be a team statement or to the media. And so I think there's a lot of progress that could be made there. Those are a few examples, and I think it's good to see Brad chiming in on what it was actually like at the Pan Continentals, and then maybe things will get better in the future.
The player treatment was absolutely on point when it came to a lot of that stuff. I have to say, the on ice stuff, it was inexcusable to almost to a certain degree, but really nothing changed while we were there.
Did you hear what Jill said? And Jill, maybe you can pick up on it. I thought Jill made a great point. As we can see, there needs to be more real-time athlete representation, because once the train has left the station, we've all been there. That was
part of the frustration too from Brad. We played Brad in the first game, and they had first practice. We had first practice. So Brad just came out to watch us practice and was told he couldn't be there. But none of this had come up before in the team meeting the day before. And he was so instantly off, right? Before the first rock had even been thrown at the competition, and all of us were in the same boat. It was what are you talking about? They can't be out here. This is, I looked at Brad, I said, this is, I used the word I won't use on air.
Is it CBC appropriate, Mike?
Yeah, you know what I was going to say. But anyway, it was one of those things with like I said, common sense wasn't very common when it came to dealing with the athletes at this event, and all of the issues within that competition could easily have been rectified. And I think that was the frustrating part for a lot of the athletes. Is everyone just said all they have to do is X, and it would be solved.
Yeah. Right.
And no one seemed to think, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't we do that? But anyway, it never happened.
Joe, is that not sort of fundamentally what curling is? Curling has always been about tradition and not ruffling feathers and 10 ends and this is the way things are. Is that not what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and I think what Mike was saying, they could have fixed a lot of stuff. The setup wasn't ideal, but sorry guys, okay, fine, you can watch from the side. Sorry, it's not the best, but there, go stand there. I mean, so that's kind of that's disappointing to hear. Because Greg's example of the pregnancy exemptions, modifications, some were made on the fly, things happen quickly. All of that was a bit, quite a debacle. But trying to make changes in real time and be dynamic and listening, that's not something our sport is exactly known for. Usually, there's that handbook comes out and it's printed. We can't reprint that thing. We can't edit it. So I think that would be nice to see our sport move in that direction when these things do come about.
Most officials are wired black and white, right? This is what the rule book says. This is the rules. I can't help you, right? And that's basically a lot of the answers that we were given at that championship. So it would be nice in the event packages that these host committees are given to have maybe a little bit of leeway to take some feedback from athletes, and if within the in the interests of the greater good they can make some small changes, I think that would have solved everything, really.
Well, what about running it past Jill Officer? Hey, Jill, we're in a curling venue this time. This is the goal, and I don't know. Like, is there something? Yeah. Is there a place for the athlete commission to, hey, but they troubleshoot this?
If it's not in the book, they can't do it though, right? Like that's what we were dealing with a lot of the officials.
You don't know what you don't know until
if it's not in the book, we can't. It's already been written down. We can't change it.
All right. Listen.
That was quite a,
let's wind down here because we're approaching an hour into the show, and this will continue, no doubt. But let's look forward. And Greg, so far, what has stood out to you as we get set for a slam? Because as I talked about with Jill, the curling calendar is jam-packed, and on any given weekend, you can watch a spiel, mixed doubles, mixed national championships. What's standing out to you so far?
Yeah, when I look at the last few months and looking ahead, I'm really blown away at the strength of the international teams at the top events. And, I think Mike and I chatted about this recently. It's like you can look back at 10, 20 years ago, and it was, a good chunk were Canadian teams in those fields. And now it's like, 2/3, 3/4 sometimes are just stacked international teams. And you'll have your 5 or 6 strong Canadian teams. So that's really been an interesting change. The Joel Bretornaz rink has really kind of been a talking point, I think, in the early going this season. Silvana Tiranzoni continues to dominate, so strong. So, yeah, some interesting storylines over the first 2 months and going forward this season.
Over to you, Joe. Hands full. You're busy. So grateful for you taking time.
For me watching, last year was the year of the pregnancy, and this year is the year of the babies and the entourages and all that goes in for these women. And, there's dads on tour too that have their kids around. And I'm living it right now, and I'm not quite sure how I did it with Alex 4 years ago. Like it's so much to have a person and then have to manage all that and then to go compete at the elite level. So I look at these teams and I'm in awe. So that for me, that's kind of hitting close to home as I'm watching these women's teams and being like, man, there's a 6-month-old on the backboards or in the stands or someone get to leave your kid at home and manage all of that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from is just watching the athletic display from a lot of women out there and the young fathers too. So that's been pretty cool to take in. And then also just getting to watch more curling than I normally do. It's been a real treat.
Nice. The grind is real. Mike, you're coaching those Koreans. They looked really good at the Pan Continental. What's with your involvement with that team?
I'm on a short leash with Korea. So I've got 4 more weeks. I'm going to go back out west for 4 weeks after this slam, and then we'll see where they go. So they actually have an interesting system there. They do it kind of old school where they actually play down for their national championship, which I think we in Canada love. So team Jim on the women's side, who are, they've got 3 world-class women's teams right now, top 15 in the world. And our guys, Team Park and Team Jiang on the men's side, who are, they're not quite up to where they need to be at the world level to kind of get into the slams and everything else, but they're very, very good. So I've got 4 more weeks with them. And then when I was talking to them about coaching, I said, well, if we get through the Pan Continental and you're happy with where we're going, then we'll see what happens for April and the men's world. So they will be the men's team in Schaffhausen at the men's world championship. So I'd like to think they're happy with how we did. I don't know. I mean, silver seems good. I thought they played really well. They have a little bit to learn. It's nothing to do with shot making with these guys, which is great news. They just kind of forgot what they were doing for 20 minutes in the 6th and 7th end in that final. So they did all the hard work in the first 5 ends to get control of the game and then gave it right back. So I have a few notes for them, but they're nice guys and they're fun to work with. And yeah, if they'll have me, I'll continue on. But listen, I love doing my commentating. I'm in Pictou County this week at the Slam, and Saskatoon, Dev, in December, which I know hopefully we'll see you there. And looking forward to I'm on the road for the next 6 weeks. My wife will miss me, I hope.
Always giving us the goods.
There
Silver
you go.
linings, no doubt. Thank you, Mike Harris, Joanne Courtney. Hello, Charlotte. And read Greg Strong Stuff, Canadian Press, The People's Wire, The People's Service. Thank you as always. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Thanks, Deb.
Yeah.
All right. That brings to an end a jam-packed curling show. As always, we do this for you. So thank you for tuning in, curling fans. We are back a week from today. We'll find out how Colleen and the Nova Scotians did at the Mixed National Championships. Yes, thank you for tuning in. That curling show, and that's a wrap. Take care, everyone.
Curling now enters the Sports Weekend Spotlight.